Okay, this is actually take two. I tried this one before and I couldn't get it to upload right. So what I'm doing today is I want to summarize a few points that I think might be useful and important puzzle pieces to somebody. And so some of it comes from my research into the writings of the faith I've been researching, and some of it comes from my experience of what I've observed and found, etc. And it's sort of the intersection of these two that creates a couple of things that might be useful to a lot of people, that you might actually not have heard anywhere else, because I don't think it's been reported. And I know there aren't that many people researching the writings that I'm looking into. So, first of all, from the research, that's all been put in other articles. Most of them have been published in the MUFON Journal. And there are three main points. One, first of all, is that there are four kingdoms of creation, these writings say, the holy writings of a little-known mystical Eastern faith, second most widespread religion in the world, by the way. And they say the four kingdoms of physical creation are mineral, vegetable, animal, and man, as in mankind. They go on to say that, and these are their quotes, not mine, and I'm paraphrasing, the footnotes are with the articles that have been published, that first and foremost, before anything else, metaphorically speaking, in a universe that is eternal and infinite, first and foremost, God created the mind, and the mind was ever to be revealed in the temple of man, again, mankind. It doesn't say human, it says man. And the reality of man is his thought, not his appearance. Now you can look at that a lot of ways, and probably some of the first ones that come to mind will be the first ones that came to my mind too, years and years ago when I first read this stuff. But lately I have figured out that it doesn't necessarily mean that. The writings also say that writings from the major religions, including this one, all come from an infinite divine source. And so those words and letters have an infinite number of meanings. There's not just one meaning to them. And so, yeah, the reality of man is his thought, not his appearance. That could mean that if I think good thoughts, I'm a good man, even though I'm dressed in rags, okay? That could mean that. And it probably does mean that. But it just as easily could also mean that I fall into the kingdom of mankind in this physical reality because I have a rational brain and mind. It's more than the brain, it's the mind. I have a rational mind that is able to reason in the abstract, and that puts me in the kingdom of mankind. And that's the meaning that I think is relevant to what's going on with this topic. So, in addition to all of the really Sasquatchy things that we have encountered, tree breaks, stomps, hoots, yells, language that you can't understand what they're saying, voices that for me sound like a conversation, a happy conversation among children, punctuated with laughter. I've never heard anything like it. It was joyful. Down in the woods, where I'm the only guy there. Believe me, I know I'm the only guy there. And presentations, gifts, not from me to them, but from them to me. All kinds of things that we don't need to go into here, but it's the same sort of thing that you would encounter on any Sasquatch type channel. feeling of being watched, sense of extreme dread. Me or family members have experienced all of that stuff around here. So the first thing that we encountered for this video episode was a raccoon carcass that I want to talk about. And on that raccoon carcass, the hide had been pulled off in one piece, turned inside out, like when you skin a cat with a tight sweater, so that it goes inside out as it comes off your hands. The hide was still attached at the tip of the nose and the paws of a dead raccoon carcass that was intact, but the guts had been removed in a single pile. No blood, no cut marks, no teeth marks, no claw marks. Very clean. And everything had been licked off the carcass, including the skull. 5 days later, and 200 feet away, I found a second one, done the same way. Same MO. This one had, the front paws had been pulled off, the head had been pulled off the neck, and then used as a handle to shove the hide off the rear end. And the hide was still attached to the tail, the tip of the tail, and the hind paws, and the skull was still in the hide. And again, everything had been licked off the carcass, and the guts were in a single pile. I took the photos of those. I'm not going to use them in this video because I'm not that adept at the software. So they're in, I've sent them to Steve Istall and to Dave Pilates. So then one of our newer subscribers turned me on to a guy with, like, I think it's Illinois Sasquatch channel. And I looked through his stuff and I came upon a video that he has done and posted on his channel where they find a deer carcass where the hide has been pulled off the carcass in one piece over the head, and the head and young antlers are still inside the skin, the hide, which has been turned inside out. So that makes 3 examples, 2 different kinds of animals in 2 separate locations found by independent people who don't know each other. So this skin a cat with the hide is a thing. And if you weren't interested in this topic, you would dismiss it as just an ugly animal carcass. And so if it is a thing that the Sasquatch people do, more of them will turn up. And we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to try to get this out to Steve Istall so that some of his hundreds of thousands of subscribers might be able to chime in and find out if this is happening anywhere else or not. We know it's happening in Illinois 3 times. That's all we know. My guess is it's the Sabe people doing this. And so if you're watching this, the question would be to you, have you ever seen a carcass like this? And just from what I'm describing, do you know of any natural animal, natural to Illinois, that does this? Because I'm certain that it's not a person doing this, or people would be talking about it. There's no crazy person turning the hide of a raccoon inside out and then licking the whole thing clean on my property. And these were, the reason I know that part is I mow up hiking path, and I mowed it in the evening, and then the next morning I found the first carcass, and I photoed it. And 5 days later, we were getting a lot of rain, or we had company. For some reason, I wanted that path mowed nice. I mowed it again, and the next morning I found the second one. So it's not like there's a lot of time expired. Between the evening when I mowed it and the morning that I found it, it showed up there twice. So nobody is eating an entire raccoon without cooking it, without making any marks on the carcass. So we're not dealing with a person, not a human, Homo sapien person at least. And if you know of any animal that does that, you let me know. Then the other thing that we realized, and this is the intersection between the research and the experience, is that we're getting a lot of things happening in sets of two. Twin tree breaks, the trees adjacent to each other, bent over, broken over in the same direction at the same time. We've had two sets of those. We've had trees in the yard split in half, which makes two, and then some years later, the second tree, right adjacent to the first tree, no trees in between even, split in half again. And then, of course, the raccoon carcasses, there's two of those. So it's like 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. Why would that be? Nobody else is reporting that. And maybe nobody's thinking about it. There could be sets of tree breaks and gifts or whatever that have meaning that people aren't looking for yet. The 2 by 2 had meaning for me because once we moved back here and once I established the trail across the farm, as I would walk out across the countryside by myself, I would recite prayers from my faith. And they would be the prayers of a messenger of God called the Bab, the gate of God, and Baha'u'llah, the glory of God. And I would recite the same prayers every time that I walked. And one of the prayers is long. The Tablet of Ahmad is like a 3 or 4 pager. And so that takes 5 or 6 minutes to say it. The other prayers are quite short. The remover of difficulties and the prayer for short healing prayer. Those prayers are quite short. They're like 4 or 5 sentences. And so I would repeat them over and over and over, sort of as a meditation. And then there's a prayer for the departed, a short prayer for the departed that is not very long at all, but I usually say it once, for my mom and dad in particular. So I take this walk on this same trail probably 300 or more times a year, and I've done it for 10 years. So I've said these prayers aloud out on the farm thousands of times. Now the interesting part about this is that the Baha'i faith has twin messengers of God, the gate of God and the glory of God. The Baha'i faith gets its name, of course, from the glory of God, Baha'u'llah. But there are twin messengers of God, and I know of no other faith in the world that has that. So when we get, and there aren't that many Baha'is. There's only 5 million Baha'is, give or take, in a population of 8 billion, which makes them a half of 1%. And so that's why I think that the things going on in my yard, 2 by 2 by 2, are a message to me about that. And what I think the message is that the Sabe people know what the Baha'i faith is. I'm not saying they believe anything it has to teach, or that any other religion has to teach. But the only thing that sets me apart from any of my neighbors around here is my faith, and it's a very rare faith in this area and the world. And the fact that everything is happening, not everything, but a lot of things are happening 2 by 2, too many to just be a coincidence, that's the message that I think they're sending. We know what your faith is. We know there are twin messengers that you believe in, because the prayers are from the Bab and Baha'u'llah. So part of this, when Christians encounter Sabe or Sasquatch and it frightens them, they tend to rebuke those beings in the name of Jesus. And when they do that, 9 times out of 10, the activity that they don't want ceases. The unwanted activity stops. And so what they tend to think then is they have commanded Sasquatch in the name of Christ and it obeyed. I don't think that is what is going on at all. I think when you invoke the name of your faith in the name of God, out of reverence for the Creator, these beings show forth reverence and they back off. It's not that the power of Christ commands them. In a way it does. Their own reverence for the Creator commands them. And they acquiesce in the request, as Captain Jack Sparrow once said. And so when I say my prayers out on the farm, I include them because I believe they are part of the kingdom of mankind because they have demonstrated that they have a mind that's able to reason in the abstract. They have language, they have clans, they have a sense of humor, and they communicate with you. Animals don't do this in such a sophisticated way. They make structures and things. We don't know what they even mean. Maybe we're not asking the right questions. So in this particular case with these prayers, I know the names of the prayers I've said, I know how many times I've said them, and anybody else could say those prayers too. If they don't want to do that, Christians might try, instead of rebuking Sasquatch in the name of Christ out of fear, and that's all baggage, and I understand where it comes from. But if you check the responses, you'll see that there are a lot of crosses made as well. They make crosses. That's an easy thing to make, and they do make them. And maybe the number and placement of the crosses has gone unchecked. Nobody even bothered to look at it or count them or think that maybe it will appear as a trinity to let you know that they know what Christianity is, that sort of thing. I don't know that anybody's looked into that in that way. And so, knowing the prayers that I've said, and I've given you the names, someone could go say those prayers if you're having an interaction with them and see what changes. Maybe something will, maybe nothing. We don't know. There are no experts in this topic, at least not at this time. So that's what I wanted to get out there, because turning a carcass inside out, the hide inside out, that is a thing, and I've never heard it reported anywhere else. And the 2x2 occurrences of tree breaks, etc., around my house, the message in that I perceive to be a message saying we have a reverence for multiple faiths. Why would they know that? Just from me saying prayers on the farm? I think that has to do with mind speak, which I've also encountered once. And that's a little strange. But the reports of it from around the world are that whatever language you speak, that's the language you hear in your head. And the Sabe people don't speak English or Portuguese or Russian or French or Spanish. Their language is unintelligible to us, yet we hear them I hear them in my head in English. So if they know how to speak to you in your mind, they may also know what's in your mind, and they tend to tag people or adopt people. And we're beginning to think that that is based on maybe not just what is in your mind, but what is in your heart. So it seems to me reasonable that they would know enough about how you feel and why you feel that way to know a little bit about what it is you believe regarding the Creator of the universe. Enough to give you a message saying that we know what page you're on. We may not be on the same page, but we know what page you're on. We know you. And that's what I think is going on here. So, that's what I wanted to share. I hope it's useful to somebody. And I'll try to get this up and running. I've loaded this video once. I'm doing a second take because for some reason it didn't like how I do it. So this one didn't come up on YouTube in a format that anyone can see. So we'll try it again. Hope it makes it. Thanks for being here. I hope you found this interesting, and I will see you again soon. Bye.